Hey guys, this is Dennis, the founder of Think Hero.
And this is Roth, your straight up reviewer.
And this is our review of Iron Man 2, directed by Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau, yeah, and Robert Downey Jr., of course.
Which we actually got to see them. They came to intro our screening at the ArcLight. That was pretty interesting. Let's talk about the positives of the movie. The acting
obviously
was strong. You know, obviously Robert Downey Jr., he seems to embody Tony Stark in Iron Man.
Yeah, it's something about Robert Downey Jr. and Tony Stark. They are one of these marriages of character and actor that's like, it's so seamless and perfect.
Some people, you know, weren't too keen on Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer, but
I loved him.
Yeah, I thought he was great.
Yeah.
Some people's complaints were he was over the top. Yeah, he was, but there was more to it than that.
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning I was a little unsure, and then later on I was like, okay, yeah, he's really nailing this role.
I actually really loved him, and I liked he was so lame, you know, and ridiculous, and I enjoyed him. I thought he was great. I think Mickey Rourke was fantastic. And I really like Gwyneth Paltrow in this role too. You know, she's not in this one so much, but I like her pepper pots.
Yeah, the chemistry between her and Robert Downey Jr. really works for me. It's probably the relationship in the movie that I like the most.
Here's something else I really appreciate about this character too, is that I love that we have kick-ass women in movies today. But what's fun about Pepper is that she's kick-ass without being this really sexualized death machine. Although I like the sexualized death machines, and we'll get into that too. But there's something great about her being like a normal woman. You know what I mean? In some ways, you know, this really organized, proper, you know, elegant.
So speaking of sexualized death machines, we have Scarlett Johansson as the Black Widow.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, as a woman, I'm here to say, great. I say thumbs up to Scarlett Johansson in a cat suit, running around kicking butt. I like her, and I think it's fun. And you know, we both have concerns about too many people and too many characters in these movies, and it was a little tough to work Black Widow in. But I thought it overall worked.
Personally, I felt like the character of James Rhodes / War Machine, I know why he's there. He's in the comic, and he provides another source of really cool action. It wasn't necessary for him to be War Machine in this movie. He does that one thing that I don't like in science fiction and superhero stuff, is when everyone becomes special, and it lessens. Remember, in the first one, it's like there's only one Iron Man suit. There's only one guy that possesses this thing, and then now in this one, it's like, okay, well, you got Whiplash, and you got War Machine, you got you know, these drones, and it just becomes this thing where it's like, okay, well, everyone's hanging out in suits.
Right. Well, and again, I mean, to reiterate the point that I made earlier, that is why I like the Pepper Potts character, because she's just normal. There
should be more normal people than superheroes, and you know, you get into that area where, you know, what's going to happen in Iron Man 3 is Pepper Potts going to hop in a freaking Iron Man suit, you know? Obviously, that's not going to happen, but you get my point. So let's talk about the action in the movie. It definitely had more action than the first movie, and I think mostly positive, you know? Especially in the end. The end sequence to me was much better than the ending fight sequence in the first Iron Man.
Yeah, I think that the action in the movie really worked for the most part. We talked about, you know, they're okay, as much as we love Scarlett Johansson, but the fight scene when she comes in at the end, it's like so not her.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's really like a stunt double a lot of the time.
Yeah, it was actually a really well done fight scene.
It was.
And probably one of the best action scenes in the movie, but the cuts, it was basically like stunt double and then close up on Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
So the one action sequence that I didn't care much for, and it wasn't because the action sequence wasn't bad, it was the context that it was given, is that there's a scene in the middle of the movie, and I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but it involves
two allies.
Yeah, two allies, and it just didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. I didn't care about it. I didn't care for it. And so therefore, even though the action itself was kind of cool, I just wanted that scene to end. The
intro to that event worked really well for me, actually. And then the scene itself was a little awkward. It seemed like, you know, and we've talked about this, that other people were able to very quickly don and master the Iron Man suit.
Yes.
Where we had already established that there's a bit of a learning curve. And Dennis made a really good point. He's like, well, if I gave you an iPhone right now, you'd not know what to do.
Yeah, if you weren't an iPhone user and I gave it to you, it'd take a little while for you to get accustomed to it, you know? And so imagine a full-on suit.
Yeah.
You know, and this happened at the end of the first movie, and it happens again in this movie.
Yeah.
Another complaint I had was, even though it didn't reach Spider-Man 3 proportions in terms of too many characters and being a mess, it definitely wasn't a mess, but there was kind of some extraneous things. You had Sam Jackson as Nick Fury, which I didn't care much for.
Yeah.
They really wanted to make sure you knew about S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers.
The Avengers. I mean, half of it was like a trailer for the Avengers.
Like a preview trailer for Avengers.
That's one thing that I think is really difficult about this franchise right now, is that, okay, so you come in with Iron Man 1, and frankly, I'm just going to speak for myself, I went into the theater with almost zero expectations, you know? And I was like, I like Jon Favreau and I like Robert Downey Jr., so I'm going to go watch this movie. And then I was really blown away. I was like, God, that was like a great comic book movie because it was so grounded and so funny. They were so human, you know? It was still had all the fantastical elements of a comic book, but they were so human and so believable, and the situations were more human than they ordinarily are. And almost socially relevant in some ways. That seemed to really fall by the wayside in this movie. And what they went for was big moments a lot of the times. Somebody would say something, blah, and you knew the exact reaction that they were expecting you to have, and it was too forced.
When you're talking about like having no expectations for the first one, I mean, the reality of it is Iron Man was always a B-level character in the Marvel universe. It didn't become this big hit until
the movie.
Until the first movie was a success and everyone loved it.
Yeah.
And now, you know, now it's like an A-level character, but always in the comics, Iron Man has never been Spider-Man or the Hulk,
Batman.
You know, Batman. There's a lot of comedy in the movie, and I actually, besides the comic book action elements to the movie, I could watch a movie about Tony Stark, the billionaire, with his rivals Justin Hammer and his love interest Pepper Potts. You know, I could watch that movie. I actually didn't really need the action. They
do such a great job of crafting that. It's just this is what I think. I think it's tough after the success of the first Iron Man because now we're prepared for greatness. You know what I mean? So it's sort of tough on the franchise to live up to that. Add to that I think it's probably got a lot more pressure on it now. So anything that could be, say, risky, I'm guessing was stripped away. You know what I mean? In terms of the story. So it's got a really basic story. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing terribly exciting about it either. Then you add to that they're really pushing the shit out of the Avengers. And so now you've got to force in Black Widow, and you've got to force in Nick Fury, which Nick Fury was one of the weakest parts of the movie.
Well, it was because it was Sam Jackson being Sam Jackson. It wasn't a character. He was playing himself, basically. And I felt like he was out of place in this movie.
I think so too, but I also think that the Avengers characters and the Avengers paraphernalia was one of those things that I'm talking about that felt really forced to me. Now I understand why they're building a franchise here. It's a financial investment that they're making in Iron Man, and Iron Man's their best opportunity at this point probably to push the Avengers, you know? But I think it hurts the overall movie a little bit. It's just not quite as seamless as the first Iron Man was.
So overall, I would give Iron Man 2 a B. I think it's entertaining. I think it's worth to see in the theater. It's not as good as the first one, but you'll enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I basically feel the same way. It's really not as good as the first one, but it's still really fun, and it's certainly better than a lot of the other things that are out there, and it's enjoyable. So I would give it a B as well.
All right, guys, so that's what we thought of Iron Man 2. You can post your comments below on the website.
Or on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the Think Hero YouTube account.
Or you can follow us on Twitter. Mine is @ThinkHero.
@JRossi.
All right, later.